Hey guys, Josh here. Welcome back to the All Out Safaris podcast, your go-to podcast for all things safari. Hello everybody, today it is just me again, but today we have got an episode as a follow-up to the last one. In the last episode, I spoke about, does your photography gear matter? Is it the gear or is it the photographer? And we came to the conclusion and answered that it is a bit of both, right? Your gear does matter, yes. When you can't compare a good camera to a bad camera, right? But a good photographer will always get the most out of their camera. So that's the thing, your skill matters most, right? It matters more than your gear. And as a follow-up episode, I'm going to be talking about what makes a good wildlife photographer, right? Photography is one of the most subjective things in the world. It's like music, it's like art, right? It is a form of art. You know, if you look at music, some people are going to prefer the Beatles, and some people are going to prefer Eminem, right? It's subjective, right? You like what you like, and you have your reasons for that. And photography and how you view photography is also the same, or how you view photographs is also the same, but for me, we can all agree, like, most of the time you will look at a photo and you'll be like, whoa, right? There's something that stands out with photography, and it isn't as taste orientated as something like music, right? Or food, for example. Someone likes avos, the other person doesn't. But with photography, there's a common ground of, if you see a photo or a certain photographer and you see their work, most people can agree, wow, that's very good, right? Obviously, certain people are impacted more by certain photographs, but there are certain commonalities in what would make a good photographer. And I could give you technical answers, like someone who knows their settings, or somebody who can compose an image well, or someone who can see a particular frame within a moment that they are seeing in front of their eyes, right? There's the technical side of it, right? This isn't a technical episode. This is me sitting in the studio telling you, if I am thinking about a good photographer, what things come to mind. I don't think about what gear they use, right? I don't necessarily think about what their compositions. I don't necessarily think about their kind of style. So you'll have some people who, well, this goes under composition, right? For me, I'm someone who loves, I'm a big sucker for tight portraits of animals, especially of the big cats. And then I also love super wide shots, right? But some people will prefer like a sort of more full body shot, something slightly wider, something slightly tighter, right? There's certain things that photographers naturally see. But there's a lot of things that go into being a good photographer. It's never one or two things, and every photographer has their strengths, right? Some people will pick up on a moment very quickly. Some people will more consistently take images that have a bigger impact. A good photographer for me is someone who doesn't miss a moment. That's something that really stands out to me, is if a moment is happening and you capture it, you nail it. That for me is a big thing, right? You speed with the camera, being able to move, because wildlife are, they aren't static subjects a lot of the time. When your best photos are, a lot of the times animals are active, right? It's not going to be a lion sleeping under a bush. It could be a leopard as it's jumping up a tree or climbing down, or it could be two rhino bulls as they're fighting, or it could be a hippo as it runs into the water, right? There's a lot of things that go into it, into capturing those moments. And for me, someone who doesn't miss those moments is often a sign. For me, if you have good photographic opportunities and you're not getting good photos, for me, there's an indication, okay, that's something you got to work on, right? And I'm by no means saying I'm a perfect photographer either. I'm not. No one really is. But there are certain things. And for me, if I think of a good photographer, for me, the telltale sign someone is a good photographer and you don't, as a viewer, necessarily realize it, is anytime you see their photos, right? If you look at, there may be certain photographers you like online, right? And if you think of a good photographer, you can think of them, and that for me is a sign, right? If I think of a good photographer, somebody can come to mind, someone particular would come to mind, where I constantly see a lot of their photos and I'm like, wow, right? A good photographer isn't someone who has one or two great photos. A good photographer is someone who has a great portfolio of a lot of great images, constantly nailing it, right? There are certain photographers out there who are way better than they realize, and there are some photographers who may not be as good as they think they are, right? It's like that. But I'm going a bit off topic here. Your ability to capture a moment in front of you is what makes you a good photographer, right? You either capture it well or you don't capture it well or at all, right? You need to be, you've got there are the technical sides of it. How do you compose your image? How do you see a moment as it's happening? Do you see a variety of shots within one scene? For me, a good example. The other day we had a leopard sighting. We were walking with it down the road, and we were driving, and it was walking down the road, and then stopped next to the vehicle, and there were many different frames that were seen, right? And in that moment, and for me, that's a good sign, right? That you are not seeing the same thing. And another thing is, for a photographer, for their portfolio, is the variety of their work. A photographer can see a variety of moments, not just the same frame every time, right? You could be someone who just sees close-ups, and you could be someone who just sees a wide shot. But then also getting creative with using your environment, using your light. You got to know how to use light, right? There's no right or wrong way to use light either, but there are obviously certain times of day where light is better, more impactful, higher contrast. Pretty straightforward, right? And then another thing that it's not necessarily part of in camera, but it is something that can make or break your photos, and that is your editing. Where does your post-processing lie? And that's probably even more subjective than photography as a whole. Some people will like things that are more unnatural, that aren't really anything like what you saw when you were taking that photo. You'll have some people who will turn greens very yellow, or greens or yellow, make yellow green. And you'll have people who make an image look blue, or someone who makes it look super purple, or you'll have someone who edits an animal's eyes so it looks like they've got a light bulb in their head. To me, those aren't necessarily good signs, right? If you look at let's say real world photography, if you look at journalism or sports photography, let's say there's a photo of Donald Trump speaking. It's never those crazy, wild, edited photos. I understand journalism isn't about that. Right? Journalism is you take your photos and it has to get out to the publishers, right? And sports photography, the same. But then you'll have guys who will maybe do a little bit of editing, guys who may do certain things. And you have the standouts in good photographers. Whenever do you see a photographer you really like their work, you really respect? When do you ever see their photos and be like, this edit is horrendous? Like, you don't. Because there's a level of consistency within their portfolio that you see and you're like, whoa, this is really, really good. For me, there are certain, I'm not going to mention any names in this. I'm trying to keep this as, from my perspective, what makes a good photographer. And the various photographers that I'm a big fan of is the level of consistency in their work. It's not up and down where something's meh, and then it's really good, and then it's meh, or it's good, and then it's bad, and then it's good, and then it's bad. It's a level of top quality consistency, top quality editing, sharp images, in focus, well composed, well exposed. So the technical aspects of it are nailed every single time. And that for me is a big thing, right? Your technical aspects, you cannot be making rookie mistakes as a good professional photographer. Like something as simple as your shutter speed is way, way too low. I understand you have the odd time where maybe you are rushed, and but that comes few and far between, and you don't end up putting that as part of your portfolio. And also knowing what images to choose when it goes to, you as a wildlife photographer, you take bursts of images, right? You don't sit there and take one photo. Let's say you've got a pride of lions walking towards you. You're not going to take one photo. Okay, cool. You're going to take a burst of photos. Then knowing which one is the best, again, subjective, but you've also got to realize, okay, what's going to impact the viewer? And there's a commonality in all photographers, that all good photographers, that their photos will impact the same kind of reaction out of their viewers. Whether somebody maybe sees the photo differently or speaks to someone differently, that's besides the point. Your technical aspects are always nailed. Your editing is always completely natural. There are times where you can get a bit more creative, especially in black and white. But when you see people start messing with color dramatically, you start questioning some things, right? You're like, you know what I mean, right? It's not like a painting. Paintings can look like whatever you want them to look like. And I'm not saying photos can't. If you want to get creative and do some things with your photos, cool. And that's that. That's you. But when it comes to also in camera and in the field, there's consistency. I'm not missing this moment. If a moment happens in front of me and the opportunity is there, you capture it. Obviously, this is when having certain gear does help, right? Having the mirrorless autofocus systems makes a big difference. Having better glass and stuff, right? It does enhance your results, but being able to capture that moment every single time makes a massive, massive difference. And like I said, invoking the same kind of reaction because of the consistency of your work. You can't have one thing that's good, then it's bad, then it's good, then it's bad. There's a level of consistency. And same with your editing. It's not different every single time, because then you can almost see, unless you're specifically trying something on a once-off. But when you've got something that's so left field, you sort of wonder, what's this kind of thing? And there is a commonality among all of your top wildlife photographers, and that is a quality of photograph in terms of something as simple as sharpness, and the technical side of it is nailed every single time. When your technical side of things isn't getting nailed, then you can see that, right? There are visible things that you can see between good and bad photographers. Technical side, one of it. And then, like I said, invoking that same reaction in terms of the quality and emotion within the image, right? There are so many things that go into being a good photographer. And those are the things that will always stand out, right? Somebody, can say, obviously you need an eye for photography. You're always going to need the ability to see moments. You're always going to need the ability to make sure you capture it every time. And those are the standouts, right? If you are someone who is wanting to become a better photographer, those are the things you've got to focus on. So now I'm going to take a step further and say, okay, what are the steps to becoming a better photographer? And if you are someone listening to this who encounters those struggles with those things that I've mentioned, such as, let's say, consistency of quality of work, a consistency within your editing and your portfolio and the kind of images you're capturing, a consistency in the photos invoking a certain reaction from your audience, and a level of technical consistency. Every image is sharp as part of your portfolio. Every image is composed well, or as well as you think it is, because obviously composition is something where you can really get creative. Technical side of it, there are ways you have to capture images. Your shutter speed's got to be fast enough. Your image has to be exposed. You've got to freeze motion. You don't want your photos to be incredibly noisy, right? And with today's software, if you've got an image that is unbelievably noisy, that is visibly way too noisy, like you would see with old DSLRs, you also got to question that, because the software is there. If you are taking photography seriously enough, you should have software that can also do the noise reduction, right? Lightroom and Photoshop, your basic photo editing platforms that most photographers will use, sorts that out for you. There's Topaz AI, which some people use, some people don't. We use that for, well, I do. I use that for sometimes maybe a bit of sharpening, sometimes a bit of noise reduction. There are the resources available to you. So if you are someone, like as I was saying, who struggles with those problems, you now know what you've got to work on, right? And the easiest way to get better is to practice. When I started seeing visible differences in my photography, it was just because I practiced. It wasn't just trying to apply something once off. It was constant practice. During lockdown, staying at home, I took photos of my pets almost every single day for 6 months, or however long lockdown was. Even if you're just practicing half an hour a day, get the practice in, get the research in, apply it, practice, repeat. You will see the change. Look at guys or photographers you may look up to, see what they do. There are plenty of photography pages on YouTube that are also very helpful, that have been helpful to us. And if you guys do have any questions on how to improve your photography other than this, drop it in the comments below. We'll gladly answer it or reach out to you. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.